Welcome back to Dr. Supercoach YouTube. You're on with Pig, and I'm continuing my pre-season series in which I get to sit down and chat with some of my favourite Supercoach content creators. Today, I'm talking to the newest member and the self-proclaimed most important member of the official Supercoach team, and a bit of a lover of a point of difference. Welcome, Dossy.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Pig. It's good to jump on.
Yeah, no, it's great. We've listened to a fair bit of each other's stuff, but also been in each other's DMs a bit. I remember Tom DeConing last year was a personal favourite of, you were like, I think about a bit of point of difference, so I might trade this guy in. And I think I went, yeah, do it, but also please captain him.
Yeah.
And then he went off for that 176. So I think that bonded and galvanised straight away.
Absolutely. And I was watching, I loved your captain videos, obviously, last year, and thought they brought a heat to the table and pretty much captained one of your top recommendations every week. And I do remember, I think he was your pod captain or something, because he obviously wasn't owned by many people. And I was like, I was at a point in the season, I think I might have been doing all right at that point as well. And I'm just like, look, you've been nailing these captain picks. DeConing was dominating. So I was like, bring him in. 170 odd. So I'll definitely take that. Thanks, mate.
Yeah, and I think I didn't even know that he was going to be going up against his brother. That just happened to be the icing on the cake.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But a couple of reasons I wanted to get you on, Dossy, one was to chat about like the draft format. That's something you've been heavily involved in, and how potentially classic players can play draft and what they can get out of it. And then just a little chat about the official Supercoach team. But if we start off, over the years you've done a heap of different. You're telling me you've had 1,000,001 projects over the time, but some of the work you've done with the draft doctors and then the Keeper League crews, they're obviously focusing on the draft format. How do you think coaches playing draft could help them with their classic side?
I think it's more it's all to do with the preseason, sort of the way that you look at the game and the way that you're looking at the entirety of a team and the entirety of where the scores are in the league. So I probably put it down to rankings where you can kind of help your classic team if you play draft. That's probably where I'd say the most benefit comes out of. And I was thinking about it when you sort of said that we'd talk about it. And it's when you sort of do your score projections of where, that's how I like to do my ranks. I don't just say, okay, this guy's 1, this guy's 2. I put my projected score next to him, and I'm not a guy that's great with maths. I'm no Jaden Popowski. I don't have any sort of projection model that I use. It's just more looking at what they average, looking at what I think they can do, just based on basically gut feel. And I still think it's really beneficial to see them all in a list. And you're not just looking at, this guy's priced here. You kind of take the pricing away from it because you're obviously dealing with draft, but you're talking about every single player. And I think the thing that the draft doctors taught me a lot about was the opportunity and the sacrifice that certain players make when, you're making way for, if a new player comes to a club, you can't just be this player's going to do awesome. You've got to be well, who's going to be coming down due to this new awesome player? And I think I just never, the fantasy community has come a long way since when I was sort of doing stuff back then with the draft doctors, but I feel like that's a lot more common knowledge now than it was then. And I think it just sort of changes the way you look at the game, just looking at more of a team sort of approach. And as I said, with draft, you're going real deep into the weeds. You're going and looking at the bottom, ranking every player or a top 100, however many you want to go. It's just really cool to be able to see that. So I think that's where classic players could benefit, sort of putting something in paper on paper or in a spreadsheet or something like that. Instead of just kind of, filling your team in the app or on the website. It's probably just going that little bit further or the little extra mile. And you don't really have to necessarily play draft to do that. You just have to, put your ideas down, I think.
Yeah, and what you've just mentioned there, I think really rang true about if you think someone's going to go well that wasn't there last year, people are going to suffer for that. So one thing, the first name that came to mind when you said that is, there's a lot of people really keen on fielding Levi Ashcroft in Classic this year. I think he's going to come in and just be a big 80, 85 averaging rookie. But Brisbane have really run a really tight midfield rotation. So if he does that, are Neil and Dunkley suffering? Are they going down? Or is McCluggage going more to the wing and will he suffer? Will Jared Berry just get pushed out? We don't necessarily know the answers to that, but that's probably one of the examples where draft coaches will often look at that and be like, "Ooh, yeah, Levi Ashcroft's coming in. I think he's going to be good. So maybe I'll just bump Neil down like 1 or 2 points, and 1 or 2 points in Classic when you're at that 600 and plus K can actually make a bit of a difference, and you can lose a bit of cash. And so that's a great point, I think, there.
Yeah, for sure. I think probably, and just thinking about the way the teams go from year to year is another thing that I think I've learned, from that draft doctor's spell. I do think, by the way, Stevie Fizz, like, probably, hopefully he's not listening, so he can, so he doesn't hear this, but I think he's probably the best draft mind going around that works. He's with the draft doctors, and it's just the things that he looks at in the off season extends to teams as well. So like, you're looking at how many disposals a team had from one year and thinking about how additions or subtractions from that team is going to change that ball movement. I know MJ talked a little bit about it when I was speaking with him about Zach Butters, about, does their game plan completely change now without Dan Houston? And it's those sort of things that I think is also added to, maybe not necessarily draft specifically, but you certainly sort of those minds in the community as a super coach fantasy community, we've come a long way, and I think looking at those things is also really important, and also in the early part of the season to kind of keep track of those things, like which teams are kicking shorter and taking more marks as a team, getting more disposals, like these different things that we can kind of see trends occurring early in the season, maybe not straight away with small sample size, but the people to get on these players or these trends quickly. And I think, the Dr. Supercoach team has obviously always been really good at this sort of stuff, eyeing trends early. You can really get a long way to getting a leg up, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And we've got just access to so much more data now that we had even 5 years ago. Like, obviously the DFS website's great, but then there's like AFL tables, Wheelo, there's heaps of these stats out there everywhere, and it's so easy to just now see, you could look and say, oh, St Kilda last year, one of the lowest stoppage teams in the league, and then if you see a trend over the first 4 or 5 weeks, we're like, hang on, these Saints are like involved in a lot of stoppages, there's a lot, maybe they've changed their game style. People that jump on that really quickly are going to reap the reward, and they might, you got to then work out what the flow-on effect of that is, but it might be Jack Steele and Rowan Marshall get more points because there's more stoppages. But identifying those trends and keeping an eye on it, whether it's individual players, CBAs and kick-ins, or whether it's, like you said, team marks, kicks, stoppages, you're right. I think draft players do really go into that detail. Classic players sometimes will, oh yeah, this guy did 110 last year, I think he's about the same, he'll do 110 again. That there is a difference, and I think you're quite right about the projections. Like, draft players go into so much, they try and put a number against every single player, and that could be really valuable for Classic, especially in your starting team, when you're like, if you're projecting X player to do 110 versus someone else to do 112 and the price is a bit different, projections could be quite handy.
Yeah, and I think, like, exactly to your point with those Brisbane guys, when you're doing it, you might just not think about this if you're, just filling out your team and you're like, oh yeah, this guy's going to do awesome. They're all going to do awesome. But if you actually put it on, whether it's a paper or just like, look, I just find I'm like visual like that. I like seeing it written down somewhere. But if you're like, oh yeah, Dunkley 110, Neil 110, Ashcroft 100, like you start being like, hang on a second, like it's just a bit easier to see. And that's where, I do love doing rankings. And I hadn't done rankings probably for a couple of years, actually, leaving the draft stuff and working with the pod lads for a bit on more classic stuff in the fantasy space, and doing a bit more draft this year. I've already found it a bit more helpful, being like, just thinking a bit more critically, I think. But we'll see how my team goes this year, probably. We'll make that judgment call as to whether it's helped after a few rounds, I think.
Well, it's a pre-season. Everyone's super hopeful at the minute, and I also think the projections can be a little bit inflated this time of year, especially from classic players. They think, oh yeah, Tom Green, he could be a 120 guy, no worries. But if you actually stop and think, you're like, Tom Green, like 112 is his max, and where's more from that? Where's he get more on that? So I think we can sometimes be, it's pre-season, we're always optimistic, but we can be potentially a little bit too optimistic and potentially the draft community are a bit more realistic, just because like the draft order and the projections are everything in draft. Like you can't really, you need them to draft a good draft side.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, not everyone's going to improve, which I think a lot of people, or whenever you see stuff out there on the social media, or you're just talking with mates, everyone's always, oh yeah, they're going to do better this year. It's like, well, not everyone can. Realistically, like some people are going to go backwards, or some people might just perform around the same mark, and it's, you're not going to get everyone improving in your starting team. It's just not going to happen. But we can try our darndest.
Yeah, that's right. And you, being in the draft space, and you're kind of, that's something you've been really interested in. You'll bring that over a bit more to SuperCoach this year. Have you? That you were telling me before, there's a podcast you're going to be doing draft specific.
Yeah, so it's going to be like, it's not going to be like a massive part of our sort of overall delivery sort of week to week. But what I was really keen to do is, we've done our ranking show in the preseason. We've ranked every position on the podcast, which I was really keen to do. So because it is very different from Classic, of course, it's a completely different game, and I really like talking about it as well. So I suppose that they're sort of shorter episodes, and also in season I'm looking at doing some waiver content, just because I think people are definitely after it. So it's just a matter of putting it out there, and that is the plan, to do kind of we've done a few ranking shows. I think we might try and do a bit of a mock draft show at least before people are doing a lot of their drafts, which I think people will be doing their drafts sort of maybe a week out of opening round, or even like opening round weekend, depending on how close you want to get to those games. So we've still got a little bit of time, so we'll be doing some sort of like mock draft, which we're currently doing. You're also a part of that, so we'll probably review the mock draft, see how it played out, and I think it was nice to involve. We've got some people doing that mock that are traditionally Classic players as well, so we've had kind of a mixture of people that are into their draft and people that are into their Classic, and I think that's a cool way to sort of see how it all plays out, and for those Classic players to enjoy draft or have a look at how it's going. How do you think the draft's going so far?
Well, that's always so much pressure, but I was pretty happy to lock away Marcus Bontempelli.
Yeah.
I know there's always the positional scarcity. Do you go for a ruck or a defender there? But I was pretty happy with that. But no, it's going pretty well. I'm always someone that likes to maybe chuck a few more big midfielders in before I start going for my forwards. And then I saw all the forwards just run off the board, and I went, I think I'll get Jesse Hogan as my main forward. So that's potentially a learning. They do go quickly, especially this year.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's been interesting seeing, and I think I learned just a few different strategies that I'd probably go differently with. I smashed midfielders pretty early, wanted to fill all those out, but there's so much value. Like once you've got your first sort of, we had 5 midfielders in our draft, but once you've got the first like 3 or 4, there's going to be some decent midfielders available later in the draft. So kind of just knowing when to maybe switch it up and go for a forward or go for a defender. It's I love playing drafts. So I've kind of always played both throughout my entire playing time, playing fantasy, playing SuperCoach. I've always played sort of both. So it's a good mix. Yeah,
and what you've said there about there being quite the midfielders go deep in the draft. I think it also that can reflect on Classic. Like you see guys like Chera or Will Day that have a small average compared to what they could do. So they slide a bit in the draft, but then you can probably look at that and go, maybe that also means there's some value in Classic and things like that. And the forwards getting picked up really quickly means that there's not that many good forwards in Classic as well.
Yeah, and I think one other thing is just the people doing content in the draft space. As I said, like the draft doctors, or it's basically just Steve now that does a lot of that content, but he's got he plays SuperCoach draft himself. That is his preferred kind of format over the years, but even just like listening to their rankings or multiple people's rankings, because that still can give you a great guide in your Classic team. Like if Steve, and he said the other day he's got Dan Houston at, I think, second in his defensive ranks, and that to me says, well, okay, if you've got him that high, then that means he's going to be super value in Classic as well. So I was kind of like, looking at that as well and being like, oh, maybe I should be considering him as well in my team. So it's just kind of those, just looking at different people's opinions. And I think, as you said off the top, people in the draft space do have that different perspective, which, often can be good to sort of balance out with your own opinions and other people in the community that you listen to.
Yeah, and even you mentioned before about waivers, people in the draft space are often quicker to notice like a role change or someone going crazy. So, I mean, Philippou last year, at the end of last year was an example. He had a big score and then bang, he was gone off waivers and picked up. But classic coaches kind of waited a week or two to see if it was real. And you kind of can do that with the rolling, like the 3-round price rolling average, where you can wait to see it happen 1 or 2 times. But if you are playing draft, you'll notice quicker, like who gets snapped up. You're like, oh, why did Toby Bedford just get picked up?
Yeah.
Oh, because he's averaging 85.
Yep.
Because he's been tagging.
And yeah, exactly. It's sort of also because you've generally got an eye on the second tier levels as well. So you might, compared to a classic coach that may not necessarily look at it. I mean, a lot, like I said, this is generalizing. Like a lot of classic coaches are so switched on now, and I think most that listen to this show would be completely switched on to all this stuff. But like you're keeping an eye on like the VFL and seeing, oh, this guy's, say it was a Riley Sanders or something dominating in the VFL. You've kind of got data to suggest that if these guys do get an opportunity in the top level, Elijah Sardis is another one last year, like he was playing really well in the VFL, you'll be able to pounce on these guys or have some more confidence that they will be able to transfer their game to the top tier.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with that. So now if we're going to move to the next topic, chatting about you joined the official SuperCoach team last year. Can you tell us about the inner workings of that team or what you guys do? Maybe peel back the curtains for us a little bit, or
yeah, for sure. I mean, so I've been there nearly almost a year. So I think I started around, it was like round 1 or 2 last season. So didn't really have the full run up of didn't get a preseason under my belt really. Which
interrupted preseason.
Yeah. So and I mean, as we know, the preseason's the biggest part, really. It's that and the early rounds of the season when people are really consuming a lot of SuperCoach content. So to be here this time around in the preseason has been really good, being able to sort of do a lot more preseason podcasts in particular. We didn't really get many out last year due to that crossover and bringing in a couple of people. So myself and Chloe Williams, who you might see, she loves her Carlton. So if you're a Blues fan, you'd probably be following her on X already. But we came in at a similar time. So my role on paper is a sports video producer, and she's the social media manager, or I think it is. And yeah, we both kind of we've taken control of like a lot of the social media stuff. Obviously she does more of the socials than I do, so we kind of just balance that out, whether it's like X, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, so a lot of all those social media stuff where people consume, and our job's really just to drive engagement for the fans, grow the game, make sure people are getting out there playing SuperCoach, getting their teams in. And then, my side of things, I do a lot more of the podcast stuff. So I do, as well as some social media, I do the podcast, the video, a fair bit of the short form video content. So like editing, short, whether it's Instagram Reels or some of the TikTok stuff, a lot of the YouTube. I do all the YouTube videos for the AFL podcast. But we've also got NRL, so we like in the off season in season that we know, our in season we're doing AFL and NRL, so the NRL SuperCoach game as well, and then in the off season it's the NBL SuperCoach and BBL SuperCoach. So we're busy all year round. It's not just the AFL game that we're doing, and we're doing, as I said, the social media stuff for that. We're also helping amplify, I guess you could say, the articles written by the journos, whether it's journalists or our own team, like, Al Payton does a lot of articles for SuperCoach AFL, and then Tom Sangster, who does the articles on the NRL side, just to help sort of promote their articles. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I've just noticed. I mean, the last year, the SuperCoach, like the official SuperCoach Twitter page, has probably been posting more regularly, and every now and then a little funny meme or a video that I attribute to either you or Chloe.
Yeah, yeah, the meme games. Yes, I've got a few people in my life that say my job is making memes, which isn't entirely inaccurate. So,
Yeah, if you can get paid to make memes, I think you're doing well.
yeah. No, I've got to make a few more memes though. We've been a bit light on the memes lately, so I think leading up into round one, we'll really get the meme game going again.
Yeah, for sure. When you get some preseason funnies happening and
Yep,
see the different players.
definitely.
One of the obviously the official Supercoach team have a bit of input into changes throughout the game throughout the years. One that I wanted to talk to you about was the addition of the flex position. If there's any insight you can give it, like how that came about, or like, do you want to claim credit for that? Was that your baby? How'd the flex come about? And I guess how do you also see it being used this year? Have you put much thought into that?
Yeah, I've put a lot of thought into that already. But no, yeah, definitely I can't take the cred, unfortunately, for that one. But yeah, I think to be honest, I believe it came in really strongly for the BBL game initially. So I mean I played BBL Supercoach for the first time this past year, and I can see why it's needed. I mean, if I don't know if you played yourself, Pig, but like
Didn't.
basically people can get out for like a duck or just get really unlucky, and you get shocking scores multiple times in a game. So losing one of those players, I think was a pretty big benefit coming in this year, and it was always just going to be like, if people enjoy this, then we might use it on the other games as well. And the feedback was really positive on the BBL game for that, and so yeah, it was kind of transferred from there to be like, okay, I think this could, as a team, it was decided. I wasn't, obviously part of that as well. It was beyond my pay grade there, but yeah, it was decided that the flex position would come into AFL and NRL. So yeah, I think personally, like when you see it the first time, you're like, oh, that's different. But from what I've seen in the community so far, I think everyone's been really open to seeing how it goes, and I think, yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how people use it. I reckon it might have been I'm sorry, I can't remember who said this in the Supercoach community, but it might have been even you guys, I'm not sure, but the using it, I think, is going to go through sort of those phases throughout the season. I don't think there's necessarily going to be one clear answer. I think people are going to use it differently to start, and I always kind of thought it's going to end up being a ruck premium at the end of the season, but I think early season it's going to be a bit of a mixture between cash gen. Do you go like an extra mid-pricer? I think it's going to be mid-pricer or an extra rookie to start with, and then I think eventually it's obviously just going to become a premium, and we tend to like our rucks, so I think being able to have that extra ruck is going to be a popular choice later in the season. But keen to see how it plays out. What are you thinking as well?
I think you're right in that, and I think Pistol even said this earlier in the year, is that it will evolve throughout the season, and it probably starts as an extra money-making ability. We've got now 31 positions that could be making money instead of 30 if you really play the Selby AFL fantasy way.
Yeah.
So that's definitely an option, an extra money maker. The also JD and I spoke about this a bit before. Now, if you had, say, we've previously had 22, 23, 20, some had 24 premiums. You could even be getting up to like 25 premiums this year if you use your trades well and are smart. So then the flex could allow you to be more risky in terms of taking those loopholes. So you could, take on a 90 on your bench, hoping the guy on your field goes 110. But if they don't and they only get 60, maybe it doesn't matter too much because that'll drop off. This is like final team end game sort of stuff.
Yeah.
That's potentially something you could be using it as, like taking more of a loophole risk. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I'm big on the more money generators, the better. So I'm definitely starting it as sweet. I can have a 31st player try to make money.
Yeah, I think I initially, I pretty much said straight away, this is going to be the ruck. This is going to be an extra ruck, which quite quickly it kind of evolved when I actually did see, started to actually use it. I'm like, oh, maybe because I was thinking, why don't I just start with an extra premium here? Why don't I start with an extra ruck premium, go bang, bang, bang. But I think the discussion at the moment, and I'm probably on the same page as a lot of people, I just don't know which rucks to pick if I was to do that. Like, is Tristan Sherry going to be able to replicate? If I'm comfortable that he is, then I'd be happy going him. But is Gawn going to also replicate? Can we trust a TDK there as well? I mean, I wouldn't have minded going like a Sean Dossy if he was going to be healthy. Him TDK and maybe back in a Sherry. So I could have probably seen that scenario, but now that we're back down to no big Shawnee Dossy around, I'm probably just going to lean towards, playing that a little bit more safe. Although I do have quite a bit of interest in a Matt Flynn, if he's going to be the number one ruck. And I guess hopefully I haven't seen if the teams have come out for the practice game coming up, but you might have already seen the game when this is released. But yeah, I'm hoping Matt Flynn gets a clean run at it and he could be that value ruck.
Yeah, I'm also interested in him if he's R1, but a lot of the training reports now are saying he's actually behind Bailey Williams, but we'll have to just wait and see, I think, on that one. But one of the other good things that it will be good for is, let's say it is in the ruck line, if you've set and forget or you got two great rucks, and then, like I'm talking about me for last year, for example, a Lloyd Meek comes through, and I couldn't get on him, and I couldn't get his catch gen. So it'll be great for that if you're kind of, even if it's your defenders and all your 6 defenders are locked, but there's another good one coming through. Yeah.
And I think there's scenarios in the past as well, like a Riley O'Brien when he broke through the first time. I mean, even a Cherry like this season just gone, I think would have been probably one that people could have used that for. So yeah, there's plenty of scenarios, like not just looking at this year, but in the future where that extra ruck slot is definitely going to be handy and just brings, I guess, more relevance to those ruckmen or those sort of second string ruckmen when they get a crack. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting how it's used, but I do think the ruck is going to play a big part of it at the end of the day.
Definitely, SuperCoach ruckman score with ease, so it could be. One thing that I haven't seen mentioned too much, but we've been talking about in our Dr. SuperCoach Slack, is that you probably do have to be a little bit careful who you have in the flex because they don't have an emergency that can come on for them. So you probably want someone really safe there and someone that maybe someone that plays early in the round so that you know that they're actually going to be playing. Because if you had someone in your flex on a Sunday and then they become the starting sub or something, you're in a bit of trouble then. So just keep an eye out that you won't get an emergency score for a flex is probably something that I haven't seen mentioned too much yet.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. I think the other thing is that, like, just the flexibility. So I think you guys have talked about this already on this show, but the fact that if you do go a third ruck, you're sort of limiting who you can rotate through that position as well. So if you've got, the bench ruck as well, then you can't really, unless you're planning on trading them out, you kind of lose a bit of that flexibility as well. And maybe the ability to switch that player out during one of these upcoming buy rounds as well just could be handy to use to have that flexibility. So yeah, it's interesting. I don't think I'll be starting with a ruck in flex, but I do see it, a play towards the end of the season or towards that mid part if you want to get another premium, or as you said, if we get someone that we need to jump on for that cash gen during the season, it's going to be handy.
Now, a question from Dr. Supercoach Slack that I've been asking everyone and going to put to you is, who's one player that you really want to start but potentially don't have the guts to?
I definitely don't have the guts to start this guy. Harley Reid for me as a West Coast fan. Just seeing the last couple of years how guys like Nick Dacos, or last few years, like a Nick Dacos and a Harry Sheezel, these next generation players coming through, top end picks that we see thrive early, and Harley's obviously shown a lot early in his career. Them just taking their game to the next level through natural progression has sort of been amazing to see how young these guys are becoming superstars, and I could see Harley Reid doing that. The reason I'm not, and I definitely don't have the guts, is he's interrupted pre-season, had a concussion issue pre-Christmas, and then he's had some other sort of soft tissue-y type looking things coming up. So I definitely wouldn't do it, but he averaged 80 last year. I could totally see him going much better than that. And I think you guys also have been talking about players that, we're looking at who are going to be in the top. I think you were talking with DR that I was listening to about, he's gone through on his guide, I think, and looked at the players who will be the top attendees. And these guys are tending to be the ones you want to target. And tell me that Harley Reid's not going to be one of the top centre bounce mids again at West Coast. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how he goes. Whether the new coach, whether he decides whether McGualter wants to play him a bit more forward instead. But the reasons don't have the guts is A, all these sort of interrupted preseason that he's had, and B, he had such an amazing year in a prime role already in his first year that all the growth comes from natural progression. It's not coming from more mid-time. It's not coming from a changed role. It's not coming from like sweeping off half back or something. It's just got to be Harley Reid becoming, the GOAT in year 2, basically. But I could totally see him getting 15 plus points on that average if all sort of falls well for him.
Yeah, I love that as a potential shout. And there were some guys chatting about it as well prior to the soft tissue injury, and it kind of, obviously, that puts a little pin in that. But I agree, he is someone that I believe will be one of the top 2, definitely top 3, but maybe top 2 CBA mids at West Coast, especially with Yo out early.
Yeah.
There's plenty of upside there, plenty of potential, but A, injuries, and B, just banking on natural progression without a role change sometimes can work, but it's a bit fraught with danger as well.
It's probably a pick I would have definitely made in the past and, immediately regretted it. So it's a guy that I've pretty much, ruled out pretty early due to what we've heard, but I would generally just love that upside. And I did, as you would know, take him in the mock draft because in draft I'm happy to back him in, but in classic, especially starting the season, I'm happy to just sit back and watch and but wouldn't be afraid to jump on early if he's firing to start the season. So
yeah, and that is one of the good things about draft as well. You can pick these players that are a bit more fun, and they don't all, if they don't go up in price a huge amount, it doesn't matter in draft.
Yeah, absolutely.
You just pick the teams you like as well. So if we now move on, we might discuss the 2 players. We're going to bring a player each to the table. We've gone for a couple of Adelaide players just because you're in that vicinity and got a bit of a read on them potentially. So the first one that you wanted to bring up, who you want to chat about?
I really want to talk about Jordan Dawson, who is currently in my team. So just looking at his stats, came back last year after having an incredible year the year prior. So he averaged, 115, I think it was in 2023, back to a 102 SuperCoach average. A lot of people started him last year. I actually wasn't one that started him last year. Just thought at the time, I was like, the price is a bit steep. I might just wait to jump on. Did jump on at almost the perfect time. I think I just missed his 168 when he turned the corner against Essendon last year. But last year was just a shocking slow start for Jordan Dawson. Had a couple of issues through the year with whether it was niggling injuries or I think he also had a concussion at one point. So I just think what he does for the Crows is invaluable to them. His disposal efficiency, to look for improvements. The disposal efficiency was at a low since 2020 was the last time he had such a poor disposal efficiency. Typically a high efficiency user of the ball, was down in that area last year. I always tend to target guys that can go 25 disposals, 5 marks, 5 tackles. That is like elite of elite, and he's done this for the past 2 years in a row, even with a reduced midfield centre bounce usage last year. So 59% centre bounces last year, 70 the year before. People probably say, how does he, he is the jack of all trades. He'll probably be used in other roles. I think he can retain, and I think he's retaining 59% easily, and there's only really upside. I don't think he gets less than that personally, and if not, I actually think there's room for him to just be that pure mid now that they've actually got these extra players to sort of fill the roles around the ground a little bit more. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. I think he'll play more midfield, And I think the complement of midfield pieces actually works better for what his game is going forward in 2025. So they've brought in a Peatling to be able to do the sort of the pressure acts, come in, the hard-nosed tackler, contested stuff, feed it out to Dawson for the beautiful left peg. And then you've got Rankin in there for some clearance work as well. But generally, I think you're going to need that big body of Dawson in there. Matt Crouch in the team as well. I don't think the numbers with Matt Crouch are actually too bad for Dawson. So that's another player I think could just play. I think Crouch is going to be sort of like a low time on ground guy, plays midfield. And then word over here is that Rory Laird's completely out of the midfield mix and going to be playing half back. Now, I think he spoke maybe with the traders and said he's going to play a little bit of mid, a little bit of back. But over here, Simeon, who's on the Phantoms lair, has been saying that he's literally trained entire preseason, just has not played half back. Now, I didn't see the game. Sorry, hasn't played midfield, has been playing half back. I didn't see the trial match, so you'll probably, if you saw that, you might be able to tell me I'm wrong here. But yeah, I'm really high on Dawson, just basically improving his efficiency, keeping pretty similar stats. I think he might be able to get forward and kick a few more goals this year as well. I'm just high on some upside. I think he could go 110 plus again this year.
Yeah, it's always interesting when there's a guy who was so good one year and then just plummeted and had a crap one. You know, was that one high one the outlier? Or actually is that kind of more norm and he can bounce back there? I know people are thinking the same with Tim English, like was his massive game 2023 the outlier? Or was last year the outlier? It's hard to predict, but yeah, with Dawson, he's normally such a good user that was something that let him down. Although it was interesting, it was only a couple of percentage points lower than the year before. So his 2023 year, like you said, he averaged 116 SuperCoach. This year just gone, he averaged 101 or 2, sorry, I don't have it in front of me, whatever it was.
Yeah, 1 or 2, yeah.
But the percentage point of disposal efficiency actually wasn't that different. But they were both a lot lower than his best can be.
I would say that's probably due to playing midfield though as well. That was those 2 years, like you're never going to use it as efficiently in the midfield as you can at, like he was probably predominantly playing half back, I think, the years prior. So yeah, that's a fair call.
One of the things that I found interesting when I was looking at him, in games he had 70% or more CBAs last year. He averaged 105. I expected that to be a lot more actually, but it wasn't necessarily the case. And kind of to highlight it further, his highest score of the year, which you mentioned, was the 168 against Essendon. That came from 80% CBA, so you're like, yeah, sweet, more midfield time, big score. But his second highest score, a 158, he only had 41% CBAs, and that was his lowest midfield game of the year. So he is someone that can absolutely rack it up and destroy when not playing CBAs as well. So I'm not actually sure the CBAs is like definite correlation to him scoring better, but the disposal efficiency and one of the things about him as well, in very un-Jordan Dawson-like fashion, he actually had 5 games last year at 20 disposals or under. So there were 5 games where he kind of just got shut out of it a bit, or maybe not shut out of it, but just wasn't involved heavily.
Yeah.
In those games, he averaged 65 SuperCoach, so that's putrid. So if he can just not have those 5 games going under 20 disposals, I mean, you're looking at a fair bit of upside then as well.
Yeah, and it was that, like, I want to go back and look to make sure I'm just not making up my own narrative here, but the start of last season, what was it? Here we go. 82, 96, 68, 99, 64. Like, that's not Jordan Dawson to me. Like, I don't know. Yeah, but as you said, like, he did pepper in some 55s and 60s later in the year as well. So I can't just put it down to the slow start, but I think towards the end of the year as well, they did mix up the midfield unit, and I just think, as I said, look, I don't know whether it's more gut feel or stats based, but for me, Jordan Dawson, I do think he can improve on that efficiency, get rid of a couple of the clangers in his game, and I actually think, as I said, sort of with that new complement of players in that midfield, like Rory Laird is a high tackling midfielder as well. Like, I think Peatling will sort of mop up some of that, but he's a high tackling, high disposal midfielder, Rory Laird. So if he's actually moving out, I don't think you're going to get James Peatling replicating what Rory Laird does. Like, I think he's going to be also a pretty good pick as well, but I don't think he's going to replicate exactly what we've seen the All-Australian like Rory Laird necessarily do. I think he's probably going to be a few less disposals, few maybe similar tackles, but I don't know. I just see Jordan Dawson cleaning up the disposals, maybe getting a few more. And also, I think Adelaide in general are actually going to be a lot better this year. And that's probably where my other argument just comes in. I think they've got a key target to kick to, hopefully, if Thilthorpe remains healthy. And I think that's also going to just allow him to get much more score involvements, like much more scoring opportunities potentially coming out of the midfield. So I'm pretty high on him. But yeah, whether the data backs me up, Pig, I'm not too sure.
It's all right. It doesn't always have to be data. I think there's sometimes got to be some gut feel in this.
Just a little bit.
Riley Thilthorpe, he's one of our mutual favourites as well. We've messaged about him before. But he provides a very big target. Even if it's just Jordan Dawson can now bomb it to a 50-50 and just it's considered effective in SuperCoach. Alex Neil-Bullen also coming into the forward line and Isaac coming on the wing. Maybe that means Jordan Dawson doesn't have to do those positions too much as well.
Yeah.
Can put him more in the midfield. So, yeah, Jordan Dawson, he's not in my team right now, but I love picking premiums at this price point that I think could get back to 110.
Yeah.
And he is firmly one of those that I've had in and out all pre-season and very much in consideration. Yeah,
I think Crow's skipper, I believe, I do. Yeah, who knows if that centre bounce correlation, as you're saying, has any impact, but 59% seems low to me for a guy that I think should be. I think he should be in there all the time, personally, but that's just my SuperCoach brain, potentially more than anything else. But I think he should be in there a lot more. And yeah, let's wait and see how it shakes out. But I'm excited about Dawson's season.
Awesome. Look forward to seeing him in the pre-season, and hopefully we do see some bulk CBAs.
Yeah.
And then the Adelaide Crow I wanted to bring to the table is Isaac Cumming. So there's a couple of Crows recruits. Obviously, James Peatling's a popular option, and I think that's quite fair enough. I didn't necessarily want to bring Peatling up because I think he's playing inside mid and probably going to be a good pick.
Yeah.
Cumming's a speculative one to me because he's so cheap. He's $287. He's not that much more than the most expensive rookies, and he's got a fair bit of experience, AFL experience now. He's like an adult spot. He's kind of not just a teenager anymore. But the wing role's interesting. So in 2021 and 2022, Isaac Cumming, he played off halfback for the Giants. Those years, he had 140 and 129 kick-ins in those years. So that like some of the biggest numbers you'll see. Even with those, he averaged 90 and 95. Like, he was a bit younger, wasn't mature, but didn't kind of blow the world on fire. But still did pretty well. Like, if he had a 90 or a 95 now, you'd be laughing. That's an awesome pick at his price. So then he fell out of favour at the Giants. He only managed 6 games last year. Now finds himself at Adelaide in their best 22. We're pretty confident with that. 287k. So if he had that halfback role and could get his average in the 90s, it's a knockout pick. But he himself has told the media he's more likely to be on a wing than halfback. It's often a poor scoring position for AFL SuperCoach. So the question is, can he make enough money? Can he average enough to make us some good money? A pick like this is nice because maybe it keeps a rookie off field and he's a bit of a safer, like a higher floor than a rookie potentially. But yeah, the wing scoring always a bit interesting. You got any thoughts on Jordan Dawson and wing versus halfback or in general?
Yeah. Isaac Cumming, I think I'm not convinced. At the moment. Now, I just want to quickly before I've got some stats here I've brought to the table, Pig. But what do you know? Like, what's he priced at that price? Because you're better at the old maths than me here, Pig. I would say in the 200 to close to 300k. Like, what would that be actually priced at? And what do you think we need him to average for it to be a successful pick? Before I sort of jump into some of these numbers.
Well, one of the things I did look at. The price stat and the magic numbers, never one of my fortes. I usually message in Slack and say, hey, if this player goes at this average, what's their price going to be? So I'm assuming it's probably like a 50 or 60 price point. I'd love to stand corrected on that. So if anyone wants to comment on that, fair enough. But one thing I did do, look through the DFS data, and it appears that a lot of the Adelaide wingers still scored okay. So this is one thing, like wingers in general are pretty average at scoring, but Adelaide seemed to be one of those teams where it was okay. So Jake Saligo and Billy Dowling were generally low 80s guys when they were playing wing. Lockie Scholl and Chase Jones were around the 85 mark. Ben Keys, when he went on the wing, was a 90s guy. So I could see a world where Isaac Cumming averages 80 to 85, and I did ask some people to do the maths on that. If he averages 80 up until his bye, he makes 120k. If he averages 85, he makes about 150k. But is that enough? Because you could probably just get a rookie for 100k cheaper that could also average 80, maybe.
Yeah, so I just looked up a player prop price really closely to him, and they averaged 53 last year. So let's just say that that's roughly where it is. I just looked up in the champion data system wingman, and just like every player that's classified as a wing, and basically what their SuperCoach average was. So you're looking at an average of you say 85 would be roughly a great or a worthwhile pick to go against a rookie.
Let's say something about that. Yep.
All right, so there was only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 players, 7 wings that averaged 85 plus last year, and 10 that averaged 80 plus in the league.
Yeah.
And those players were, to your point though, Lockie Scholl was one of the players that 85, Jake Lloyd, Jared Berry, Massimo D'Ambrosio, Josh Dacos, Blake Acres, and then of course Errol Goulden up top. So just looking at those names there, I mean, what do we think? You know, I don't know what sort of player Isaac Cumming is on the Adelaide Crows wing rotation. Like, has he ever been? I mean, the only times, to your point, when he was playing defence, when he could rack up, was when he was getting bulk kick-ins. So I just don't know if he's going to be able to basically get enough of the pill out there. Like, I think he'll use it really well. He's typically a quality user, but is he going to get enough pill out there to really make that money? So Lockie Scholl had nearly 22 disposals a game. Like, do we see Cumming getting to that? I don't know.
Probably not. I think it's a bit of a stretch. And those 7 names you mentioned, you could make an argument that they're all, higher quality, better players than Cumming. Like, you could even say, I wouldn't be a stretch to say Lockie Scholl's a better winger than Isaac Cumming. So, I mean, Scholl, I'm not sure what their rotations will be. Like, I'm assuming Scholl might still have one. Saligo played a fair bit of wing when he got pushed out a little bit, but it's interesting. I'm umming and ahhing because I do like someone who could maybe make 150k, maybe just be a safe 80 average without, so you don't have to cop a rookie's 40. But also, it's not very exciting, and maybe that 100k could be spent elsewhere much better.
Yeah, I mean, does he, like, if he is rotating, if he's wing and then rotating at half back and then getting some kick-ins, like that sort of stuff, that's much more tempting for me. I think I'll probably wait and see. He'd be one of the guys that I'm happy to wait and see, like, let him play his first couple. Like, if he's a knockout pick in the first couple, I'm happy to trade that sort of player in, but I think in my starting team, I'm pretty happy to just leave him out, go with a rookie for cheaper, or just pay up a little bit more for a bit more security with that role. Because just wingman, typically, if he was playing half back, put it this way, I'd be locking him away for sure. But he's playing, if he's playing wing, which it sounds like he is by all reports, as you said, he himself has said that. I'm far less tempted, and I think it's more not a wasted pick, but one that you can sit back and have a look, and you're not really. Like, I feel like we'll have some trades that we'll need to make in the first few weeks, and if he's one of them, I'm happy to just bite the bullet on that one, I think.
Yeah, and that's fair. And he's also at a price where if someone at mid-price that doesn't go well, say it's Peting, or there's people on Ollie Hollands, or even Callum Mills or Matt Roberts, if you're using the flex with some DPP dooziness, he's someone that could easily, you could just, if he's going well, they could pivot down to him. So I think I'm in agreement here, and It's just that awkward price and not real safety, like not even a guarantee. I mapped out how he could make 150k, but that's probably nearly best case scenario if he's on a wing.
Yeah, and even his last full season where he was playing, I guess he was playing a bit of a mixture of that role at GWS. Was it 2023? Did he? I don't know if I can't remember if he actually played more wing that year. It seems like he had some kick-ins, but like a 20 games for a 68 average.
Yeah, right.
if you get stitched up with something, like if he doesn't perform and you get stitched up, I feel like that it could be one that you can't trade out for a little bit as well if he's just doing enough.
Yeah.
So yeah, for that reason, I'm not that keen.
That's fair call. And that data you just brought up was, 18 teams, so probably 36 wingers and only 7 go at 85. So expecting guys that coming to suddenly be one of those 7 probably is stretching the friendship a bit too much.
Yeah, and definitely like only 3 90 plus as well. So it's like you're not even going to get that sort of high ceiling that you'd really ideally want from like a player. But yeah, they don't all have to go massive, but you're definitely not going to get massive ceiling, a massive ceiling in that wing role typically. I mean, based on that data, apart from if you're Errol Goulden. So
yeah, very good. I think we've provided a pretty good summary of those 2 Crows boys and gone through a good bit of a chat about draft. Hopefully encourage some people to play draft and give it a try for the first time if you haven't done it yet. And you can see, the planning that goes into people creating their draft leagues and their projections and their rankings can really help classic coaches, and a bit of a chat about the flex as well. So yeah, thanks very much for your time, Dossy. And if you want to plug your Twitter, tell people where you can find you, tell everyone what you got going on in your off-season projects. I know there's a million things that you're up to.
Yeah, I suppose probably the big one, just if you're not, or if you've been away for a couple of years, maybe just come check out the SuperCoach official podcast. A lot of change has happened sort of over the last few months, probably from last year. It's changed quite a bit. So yeah, just go check it out. See if you like it, or if you've if you've been away for a while, see if it's changed quite a bit from the last time you gave it a listen. Hopefully it's on the up, I suppose. So check out the SuperCoach AFL pod, all the official channels as well, is where myself and Chloe will be doing a lot of content coming up. And then I'm just at HKDoss on X as well if you want to follow yours truly.
Follow, and then make sure you're getting the TDK love, and I'm sure Dossy will let everyone know when TDK has a big one again. Yeah,
well, it's all now. It's do I back both DeConnings is the question now, Tigo.
Double DeConning.
Do I have to go the brothers? So there's lots more decisions to be made before round 1. I think the latest iteration of my team is probably the one I'm most happy with as well. So I can finally sort of rest a little bit easier at night knowing that I've at least got a draft I'm relatively happy with.
You say that now, and then the preseason games will throw everything out the window.
Yeah, the practice up. Yeah, it's all going to change. But for now, I can rest easy.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for your time, and thanks everyone for watching and listening. Don't forget to subscribe, turn your notifications on. We're now 7 of these done, but there's still 3 more awesome ones to go. And as Dossy said, check him and the SuperCoach guys out on Twitter. Check out the official podcast, and we'll see you for the next show.
See you later.